Well, we have an encouraging story this morning. We've got Mr. Michael Crossland in the studio.
Welcome to the show.
Good morning. So wonderful to be here. Good morning, Newcastle.
Are you okay with being called Mr. Michael Crossland? That doesn't make you feel too...
Well, you've got to be visiting a few schools, and I thought, hey,
Oh, no sirs, no misters. Makes me feel like I'm my father. No, I'm good. I'm good. But great to be here. Thanks for the introduction.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Look, we're going to delve a bit more into your story this morning, but for people who don't know who you are, if you were to do like a, 1 minute a summary of who is Michael Crossland, tell us, I guess this is your chance, who is Michael Crossland?
Wow, I would say that
let me start the timer.
Yeah. I would say that I'm no celebrity, I'm no pro athlete, I'm no famous actor or superstar. I'm just an ordinary old Australian who's certainly faced my fair share of challenges and darkness and pain, and now feel incredibly blessed and grateful to have the opportunity to travel the world and share my story with people. Was in the corporate world for a long time and decided to follow my dream and passion, and now been lucky enough to share the stage with the likes of the Dalai Lama and Richard Branson and Tony Robbins. And again, sometimes I just need to sit back and pinch myself and realise that leaning in and letting go has been an incredible journey, and now to be able to do what I'm doing around the world is such a gift.
Now, it's incredible to look at your journey and just having a snapshot of that without the backstory behind your health journey in amongst all that. You've had incredible success, but it has not been easy. Take us back to the beginning of your story.
I talk a lot about the cards we've been dealt, and a lot of people say to me, man, you've been dealt with some really crappy cards, and I always respond with, as long as I'm being dealt cards, that means I'm still in the game. And it's not about the cards we are all dealt in this world and in this life. It's about how we play those cards that allows us to live a great life. My card started pretty early in life. 11 months old, I was diagnosed with an incurable cancer of the central nervous system called stage 4 neuroblastoma. Doctors said there was no chance of survival. Mum asked one question: I don't want to know what the chances are of my son dying is. I want to just understand what the chances are of my son surviving is. They gave me a 96% death rate, and my mum chose to look at my life being 4% full. And I think every day so many of us look at the glass, the beer, the wine, whatever it might be, being half empty as opposed to half full. And like you said earlier, hump day, it's downhill from now. Well, downhill may be meaning that it's an easy stroll to the end of the week because you're at the top of the hill and now you just get to coast for the rest of the week. So for me, I had a mother, an unwavering, committed mother that sacrificed so much of her life to not quit on me. My chemo cycle was 9 days on, 3 days off for nearly 3 years until the tumour had built a resistance. It took over half of my body. It grew up into my aorta. It was wrapped around my spine. It was crushing my heart. Went into surgery. I'm sure we'll unpack this, but I died on the operating table, and my mum was told that I hadn't made it through. And then during that conversation, the nurses ran out and grabbed the doctor and brought him back in, and I came back to the world. And then after that, there was nothing they could do. The drugs weren't working. The surgery wasn't a success, and they asked whether or not we wanted to be a part of a trial drug. They were trialing on 25 patients around the world, and we really believe that outside of love, hope is one of the most powerful words in the English dictionary. And if you can instill hope and faith into somebody's life, it's remarkable what they can overcome. And it gave us hope. And we prayed on it, and we decided to say yes. And regardless of the side effects of this drug, we weren't allowed to sue the company. So it was basically, you're going to die or you can trial this, and if you die, well, you were going to die anyway. So we started the drug with 24 other families. Within 1 day, we're all transferred from the oncology ward to the burns unit. The side effects of this drug were so bad that we were covered from head to toe in blisters. They would wrap us up in bandages. They would lie us in baths full of ice, trying to prevent our brains from frying. And sadly, within 90 days, 24 out of the 25 of us had passed away. And, I share with people all around the world that I'm one of the lucky ones, but I never share that I'm one of the lucky ones because I'm still alive. I say I'm one of the lucky ones because it wasn't my mum. I've learned at very, very recent times that it is so much easier lying in the bed than standing next to it. From there, we were on that trial drug for 18 months, and they were obviously horrific times back in the day. And then they said that it was funny because I don't know why doctors think that curtains are soundproof. Like, I'm sure everyone agrees, right? They take the parents or the family members outside to give them the bad news, and we're in the bed, we can hear everything. And they said, your son's never going to go to school, he'll never play sport, he'll be a housebound baby, and if he reaches his teenage years, it'll be a miracle. My family, we believed in miracles, and my mum come through the curtains and said, oh, what did the doctors say? And I said to Mum, what did the doctors say? And she said, oh, the doctors told me that everything was going to be okay. So she let me go to school, she let me play sport, she allowed me to lead a normal life. And yes, there was a lot of challenges along the way. I had my first heart attack when I was 12. I was fortunate enough to play the game that I loved, and that was baseball. Went to America when I was 14, 15, 16, 17, got a scholarship to play baseball over there and study sports psychology. And then my health deteriorated when I was 18 and came back, got into the corporate world, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot, because there was a lot of ego and arrogance. There was a lot of power, privileges and possessions. Like, that was my key focus. And then hit rock bottom in 2010. My health deteriorated rapidly. We decided to give back to the world and walk away from chasing money. And that's when we were told we'd never be able to start a family, like your question. So we went to Haiti, where an earthquake hit 2010, killed 316,000 people, left millions of people homeless, and we started an orphanage for 44 beautiful little babies, and we finally become parents, which was just was such a gift, and we really thought that we found our true purpose and our true calling. And over the years, we funded that, and speaking obviously started to explode. And then I got some big opportunities, and we had a video go viral. It's had sort of 80 million views now, and so the whole speaking stuff was happening. And then in 2016, I got diagnosed again with 4 tumours of the throat, and that's when I wrote my book, because I thought that was it. I really felt like my time was up. And when I got through surgery and they couldn't remove all the tumours, there was one still wrapped around my vocal cord. I remember reflecting, just going, of all the things that I've achieved and accomplished, and the one thing that I wanted more than anything in the world was to actually be a father. I just think that that's one of the greatest gifts I think God can bestow on any of us is to be a parent. But they said that would never happen because of all the drugs and stuff as a kid. And then out of the blue in 2017, we had a little miracle, and my wife fell pregnant, and that was just the most amazing experience. And it's funny when I wrote it down before when I walked in. It's like so many of us doubt when we have an encounter with God. We doubt when we have a miracle. We doubt when there's a moment that the only way we can describe it is that God had His hand on that moment in our life. And I think the more that we can expect the miracles, the more we will accept the miracles. And for us in that moment, there is no other answer, but it was a miracle. And our world was changed with so much joy and happiness that was followed by extreme pain and suffering. And that it created so much fear and uncertainty. My wife was nearly 29 weeks pregnant when she went into labour, and we were airlifted from Coffs Harbour to Sydney Hospital, and the doctors and the staff down there were incredible. And 4 days later, my wife gave birth to a very sick little boy named Lachlan James. So he was taken away from us. He was put in intensive care unit level 3. He was in a plastic bag. We couldn't hold him. We couldn't touch him. And I got to tell you, I was a dad for less than a day, and I felt like a failure. I couldn't take his pain away, and I couldn't take my wife's pain away. And then a few days later, they told us that he had a horrible illness called sepsis, and we had to prepare his funeral. And we were so lost, and we were so broken. And it's amazing when we're in the darkest moments of our lives, we finally prioritize what's truly important. And that's when we ultimately had to surrender. We had to give everything to God and just say, we know that this is out of our hands, this is out of our control. So please don't take my little boy. And he didn't. And now he's a beautiful, healthy 8-year-old. And God bless us again in 2020. Somehow during COVID, my wife fell pregnant, which was amazing. And in 2021, we had a gorgeous little girl. So now we have an 8-year-old boy, Lockie James, and we have a gorgeous, very, very fiery 5-year-old girl named Summer Grace. So God is good all the time, and it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, incredible. I want to throw you in the deep end. To those who are saying, how, why God, why so much suffering for someone who seems like a good guy? what would you say to that person?
You know, I love the phrase that God gives his greatest challenges to his toughest soldiers. And every time I face another hurdle, every time I face real pain and suffering, like 2010 was probably the lowest I've ever been. I had bacterial meningitis, had fluid on the brain, had Bell's palsy on the right-hand side of my body. I was lost, broken and alone. And I remember my wife, she would come into hospital every night and she'd say, I love you, and I'll see you in the morning. And I would wait for it just to be far enough away. And I'd say, I love you and goodbye, because I remember so clearly just lying in bed praying to God every night in hospital saying, please just let me close my eyes and not wake up. I had enough. And it was almost like I was in the bottom of a well and I was like paddling to try and keep my head above water, right? And you know how you're the average of your 5 people you spend most of your life with. My 5 are yelling at me from the top of the well saying, just grab the ladder and climb out. It's easy, just do it. But like you said, we can't compare other people's challenges with other people's challenges. What we can do, though, is look at our challenges through a different lens, which then maybe enables us to look at our challenges a little bit lighter or brighter, gives us the courage and the strength to realize we have more in us. And at that moment in 2010, I surrendered. I just gave up. I felt like I quit. And when I quit in the bottom of the well, metaphorically, I stopped paddling and I hit the bottom of the well and realized that the water was only chin deep. So in the darkest moments of my life, when I didn't want to be here anymore, I could still breathe. And I think whilst ever we can breathe, we can get clarity, we can get purpose, and I think the 2 greatest days in one's life is the day that we are born and the day that we discover why we are born. And I think God gives us the courage and the strength, not the pain and the suffering. He gives us the courage to be able to lean into that dark moment in our life to identify what it is that we were put on this earth for. And, you know, I really believe that every time I face a challenge, it's almost like God saying to me, man, you've got more in you than what you give yourself credit for. So for me, it's almost like him giving me a pat on the back saying, hey, keep going. Keep going. And, even I was diagnosed in 2022, 2023. They found 6 more tumours in my throat. And I was fighting not just for me this time and my wife. I was fighting for my kids. You know, they're doing a movie on me at the moment, as you know, and there's a line in it. And I say, I don't want to be healthy enough to walk my daughter to school. I want to be healthy enough to walk her down the aisle. And that changes everything, you know. And I just think that it's so important to realise that we all have so much more in the tank than what we could ever give ourselves credit for. And he doesn't put us through the pain. He gives us the strength to get out of it.
You've spoken around the world. Your story inspires, your words inspire. You've also, though, put your words onto paper because you've written a couple of books, and we're going to give away a couple of books this morning, which is cool. But one of them, your most recent one, is called Everything Will Be Okay. Now, I've got to ask about the title because your story is not one that the word everything is okay would be something that you would expect to be paired with your story. Tell us a bit about this title.
So I guess it gives us an overview snapshot of my life. Obviously, it's my autobiography, but I guess if you go all the way back to where the journey began when I was diagnosed and the doctors took my mum outside and said, he's never going to do this, he's never going to do that. Mum came in the curtains and said, hey, the doctors told me that everything was going to be okay. And when I was 12, I had that heart attack and they said that I'd never be able to play sport again. And I made out I didn't hear what the doctors said. And Mum came back through the curtains and I said, oh, what did the doctors say? She said, everything will be okay. So this theme kept running through. And then in 2010, when I got really sick again, I was actually here at the John Hunter Hospital where I had meningitis and everything else that was going on, and Mum was still there and my nurse from being a child was still there, and that same theme was, oh, they're all telling me that everything was going to be okay. So I just kept believing that. And then in 2016 I was diagnosed, and for the first time I actually heard what the doctors had to say. And the doctors told me, you know, we found 4 more tumours in your throat and your tomorrows aren't guaranteed. And I remember saying back to him, that's one thing that we all have in common because no one's guaranteed tomorrow. And I got in the car and I was driving home and my phone rang and it was my mum, and I knew exactly what she was going to ask me. I knew exactly what I was going to say. And she said, oh, what did the doctors say? And I said, oh, the doctors told me that everything was going to be okay. And then we fast forward to when our beautiful little boy was born, and when he was really, really crook, and my wife went in to see my son, and he had sepsis, for those that have just tuned in. And then the doctors took me into a room and told me that and said that he probably won't make it to the end of the week. I went back into that room and my beautiful wife said to me, what did they say? And I said, the doctors told me that everything was going to be okay. And then when COVID hit, my world changed a lot. I went from 180 to 200 flights a year. I was traveling all around the world to complete and utter isolation with only one lung, a damaged heart, a low immune system. The fear of dying was crippling for me. I know now I just needed to lean into my faith, and it would have made it a lot easier. But at that time, I was lost, and all of a sudden, we just paid a 10% deposit on building our dream home, and everything got cancelled. My agent rang, 68 events got cancelled overnight. And my wife said, what are we going to do? And I just said, I just feel in my heart that everything's going to be okay. And all of a sudden, I was like, maybe that needs to be the title of the new book. So we finished the book in 2021, and it's a bestseller now in 6 countries around the world. And we don't take any profits from the book. We've never taken a cent, and it makes my heart feel really good knowing that the message intended is being received. But more than that, the legacy is being left, and we're being able to inspire others that that I don't get to be in front of.
I know that faith is a part of your life now, but has that always been the case?
It's been a roller coaster. I think that's probably the best way. I started with great faith as a very young boy because there was great fear of death. So my mum and dad definitely were in that faith world. And then all of a sudden I got to the other side of the treatment and the trial drugs. It killed everybody, and I was on the other side, and clearly a miracle had happened, being one of 25 that survived. And then went to school. School was really tough. Like, I was very different at school. I had no hair, I had no eyelashes, had scabby skin, wore bandages to school, was on a nebulizer every recess, lunchtime. I remember reflecting often to my mum, saying that my time in hospital was easier than my time at school because I never got picked on in the hospital. So that journey was a real battle, and I still had to lean into that, And then when I was 12, I got crook again, and then the America stuff happened. Baseball was going really well, and I didn't really lean into my faith, and I was probably quite a long way away from it. I was enjoying the world that I thought was bringing me great happiness, yet it was very shallow. And then I got really sick again when I was 18, came back home. Somehow got into the corporate world here in Newcastle, and then got a national role in Sydney, and then all of a sudden it was like 600 staff, and I was driven by ego and arrogance, and I had to have the multi-million-dollar house and the Rolexes and the Armani suits and the $100,000 sports cars, and I was creating the perception of what I thought success was. And the more I chased ego and arrogance, the further I went away from God, the further I felt like I was doing it all on my own. And I say that with disappointment now, because I realize that a life without God is a very lonely existence, and a life that potentially could be filled with so much fear. And it took me, even 2010, like I was telling everyone before, about hitting rock bottom and not wanting to be here anymore, I started to speak to God again. I started to ask for help again. And I'm like, why is it that when times get tough, we lean in and ask for help, but when times are easy, we think we can do it all on our own? So when I say that it's been this like roller coaster, that's very much what it was. And then all of a sudden the speaking career took off, and I was, speaking in front of 15,000 people in Vegas. And I was like, man, this is amazing. I'm back. I'm on my own 2 feet, and I can do it all myself. And then diagnosed in 2016, I was really scared of dying. And I think I was scared of dying because I didn't know where I was going. And that uncertainty really crippled me. And I think off the back of that, there was this tease of like, hey, you've had some sort of a relationship with God, but you've never really ultimately surrendered. And then when our son was born and he was so unwell, I remember just yelling in church that I hadn't been to forever, saying, God, you take my house, take my car, take everything I own, but please don't take my little boy. I just remember just finally realizing what was important. And, when he allowed us to take our sweet little boy home, was just this moment of such great joy and freedom and peace. And then 2020, I got lost again in this world of COVID and being in lockdown for 11 months because of my immune system. And I questioned my why, and I questioned why I was doing what I was doing. And then when I was diagnosed again in 2022, I think it was the first time where I really ultimately just completely surrendered. There was moments of relationships and conversations, but I spoke to God when I needed something, when I wanted something, but that's not a true relationship with God, because that's just a one-way street. I just want to take and take and take and not have the conversation. And it really, I think, took me, like I was saying, in 2022, when I remember so clearly I was going to the airport with my 2 kids and my wife, and I was flying to Sydney for this operation that I may never come home from. And I visualized the night before what it was going to be like, and there was going to be lots of tears and lots of emotion, and I was going to hug my kids because my kids thought that I was going away for work. Mm. And I could only imagine how they were trying to understand why Daddy was so upset at the airport, considering he was just going away for a week to do a heap of talks. And then I prayed and prayed and prayed that night for peace. And I got to the airport with my 2 kids, and I gave them a big hug, and I just said with such confidence and peace and grace that I'll see you next week. And there was no doubt, there was no worry, there was no fear, there was no uncertainty. And I realized at that moment, wow, this is what true surrendering feels like. And I just had to let go. And what I think about that moment in my life is, like, I'm sure many of our listeners today have kids, and it was like when your kids are on the monkey bars and they're really high and they're swinging and they're holding and they're like, Mom, Dad, quick, help me, grab me. And you're down the bottom and you're like, just let go. I've got you. Just let go. And they're screaming and they're like, no, it's too far. I'm going to hurt myself. And you know so confidently with no doubt that everything's going to be okay. So just let go. And they won't. And then all of a sudden you start to get angry. I'm like, I told you to let go. Just drop my, your arm's going to get sore. And you just start to get angry. And I'm like, imagine what God thinks when you walk in your life daily with so much doubt and fear and uncertainty, when he's up there saying, just let go, I've got you. And I think that was the moment when I really ultimately surrendered. And now I walk with a different peace. And that has given me such a greater sense of purpose in life. And now I know where all the glory belongs.
Yeah. You've been through, you described it as a roller coaster, your connection with God, in, out, up, down. How do you view God now as opposed to how you have viewed God in the past? I
think almost similar to what you were talking about earlier that you touched on, and that was like there was a lot of why. Why me? Why are you putting me through this? Why? And there were so many moments in my life where I thought I was so alone, and I was doing it all myself, and I was carrying the weight of the world and the burdens and the pain and the suffering. I was doing it all on my own, and it was all me, and it was all by myself. And now I realize that they weren't my footsteps in sand. And man, that just makes me realize I could have never got through what I have gotten through without him carrying me through them.